I just want to let you know that I do believe in you. I'm not anyone different. I'm just someone who is determined, and I think anyone can do what I did as long as they put their mind to it. I envision myself having a daughter one day, and I would like for her to have the example that, there are girls out there. You don't need to limit yourself just because it hasn't been done before. That you can pretty much go down and, break the ceiling or the walls down.
Hello and welcome to this SUPboarder interview with Lindsey Tilton. Lindsey is a force for good when it comes to inspiring women to push their boundaries and harness their self-belief to accomplish anything. You may know Lindsey from the last paddler standing event where she completed 48 laps and set a new record for total laps completed by a woman. She's also competed in the Crossing for Cystic Fibrosis, which is an 80-mile paddle in open ocean from Bahamas to Florida. Lindsey runs Aloha Athletics, a company built to get you ready for endurance training. And before we get into the chat, Lindsey would like to share something very special with you.
I am looking this year for Last Paddler to, I want to have one or two girls that I mentor through Aloha Athletics, but completely for free, just to give back and to have other girls out there. So if that's speaking to you, if you're thinking about it, whether you have a goal of, 12, 24, 48, it's not any race that you need to go out to win. I knew last year it'd be very unlikely if I did win, but I still wanted to go out there and push myself. So don't let any of those negative limitations hold you back. I would love to see you out there.
What an opportunity to be mentored by one of the best female athletes we have in the sport of SUP. If you'd like to reach out to Lindsey, please do click the links in the description below. This interview dives into who Lindsey is, her inspirations, and the positive message she is sharing with the world. Lindsey shares how to prepare mentally for an endurance event, the strategy she employed in the last paddler standing to complete 48 laps, and how she's putting herself out there to inspire and push the boundaries of our sport for the next generation of women. Let's jump right into it.
Let's get started, Lindsey. I mean, we're all amazed at what you've achieved at Last Paddler Standing last year. It was just a super inspiring achievement and something that we've all been talking about here at SUPboarder magazine. But I want to go back. First off, can you just introduce yourself in your own words? We all have an idea of who you are, but it's great to hear who you are from yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first, thank you for saying those kind words. It's kind of strange having people know your name because I'm just a random person. My name is Lindsey Tilton. I work full-time in finance, and paddling is kind of my hobby and how I find fulfillment, enjoyment from having a finance job.
Yeah, nice. And how did you get into stand-up paddleboarding? Was it just something that you saw maybe on the water, wanted to give it a go and try, or was it through friends? How did you get into the sport?
Honestly, kind of randomly. I was living in Northern Virginia during the pandemic. There was not many things you could do with friends. Paddling is something where you're mostly naturally social distance and outside. So during the pandemic, I randomly saw like a Facebook ad for a paddle yoga class. I signed myself and my husband up for it. And that same day I went home and told my husband, I'm going to buy a paddleboard. That was like such a cool, different experience. I fell in love with it right away. I had a surfing background. I started surfing as a kid when I was 11, and then moving to Northern Virginia in the DC area, the nearest waves were over 4 hours away. So paddling was a good transition to get back onto the water without having to make that commute. And then that was just like rec paddling. I started teaching paddle yoga pretty much right after that. After that class, I said, this is something I want to do. I was already doing a yoga teacher certification, but taking the practice of yoga onto the water was really cool and unique. And I knew it was something I wanted to do. So I taught that for a little while and then moved down to South Florida in November of 2021. And right away, when I moved down here, I started seeing flyers and coffee shops and things like that for the Crossing for Cystic Fibrosis, which is an 80-mile paddle from Bimini, Bahamas back to South Florida. And I said to myself, wow, that sounds like so cool. I definitely want to do that one year. And then lo and behold, I emailed the race director, Travis Suit, who runs the Piper's Angels, which is the nonprofit that the race benefits from, asking about the 2023 date because it felt kind of soon to me, just moving here in November and then to go from pretty much no distance at all, just paddling around, cruising and doing yoga on a board to doing 80. I was planning for the next year. And he replied back and said, the date, and I had a conflict. It was my cousin's wedding that I was in. So I was like, 2024 is way too far to plan for. So I just got to do it now. So pretty much right away signed up for that and trained for that race on my rec board and then eventually got a race board. But that's how I got into it really was through signing up for the crossing is how I got more into like endurance and race paddling.
Yeah, it doesn't seem that long from when you first picked up a paddleboard to doing 80 miles across the channel there. That's just a crazy thing to do in your first few years paddleboarding. I read somewhere that you were previously a marathon runner. Does that kind of transition into you doing the endurance side of stand-up paddleboarding?
Yeah, for sure. I've done a lot more halves. I only did one full marathon. I did always like the distance and like the long haul training. I don't know, honestly felt like running was a time to quiet my mind, just being alone or sometimes with friends out there. It was a way of like an avenue of peace for me. Like I said, having a corporate finance job, especially in DC area, it's hard to escape certain things. So running was that for me. And then right before moving here, I had an ankle injury and kind of had to give up running. I still haven't been able to get back into it. So coming from that running background, had like just a passion for endurance and a natural kind of feel for it. Um, I would say it translates. I see a lot of people that come into paddling through running or are they run halves or fulls and they're able to have that endurance base. Same thing with cycling. I think it translates a lot. You see a lot of cross training for paddling on either a road bike, Peloton, anything like that.
Yeah, it's amazing to see people coming in from different angles from different sports as well. And it seems like stand-up paddling has been, I mean, for your injury, it's been a good thing. You've been able to stay active and stay fit on the paddleboard rather than doing the running.
Yeah, for sure. I was like running a lot of miles at the time. Right before I got injured, I was trying to do like the year in miles. So over 2,000 miles a year was kind of my goal for running.
It's
And
crazy.
giving that up, I haven't seen I haven't seen any, like, changes, like, I didn't gain weight or anything like that, so I feel like paddling is a really good, substitution, and now even if my ankle ever did magically get fixed, I'm kind of avoiding surgery to do that, so if it did, I don't know if I would ever go back to it in that capacity, like, maybe 10, 5, and 10K just as a way to, like, keep your cardio up, but I think paddling really can replace that depending on how you're training and you're on the water instead of boring pavement, so I don't know if I'll ever go back to running.
Yeah, nice. And how often do you get on the water a week?
I would say I have, like, 4 training sessions a week. Right now, I'm training for the crossing for cystic fibrosis. In June, I'm looking at maybe the MR 340 in July. So I'm getting out like 4 days a week for like scheduled training sessions, and then maybe 1 to 2 actual days a week taking others out at a slower, more chill pace or teaching others how to paddle.
Yeah, nice. I saw that you have your own business as well. It is the Aloha Athletics. Did you want to talk a little bit
Yeah,
about that? Because I see you're doing a bit of coaching with that, some training plans as well, especially for the crossing for cystic fibrosis as well.
yeah, we just launched that. My best friend Casey McCullough and I launched that at the end of last year, trying to help fill the gap for some of these long endurance races where you don't really know how to train for it. For me, when I came into the crossing for CF, that was my first race and my first endurance paddle. I was coming from that marathon, half marathon background where I could just go and Google 16-week marathon plan and go in and check the boxes. There was really nothing out there for paddling. So we're trying to fill that void to help people prepare for these races. So we started with the crossing for cystic fibrosis because right now is when people need to start training for that. But we're planning to do other races as well. I'd love to have something for last paddler. I did a ton of research just on my own preparing for that race. So I want to help others with where they're looking for that knowledge and that expertise.
I mean, I'd be pretty excited to see a training plan for the last paddler standing. That would be something that's pretty like, next level.
Yeah, next level for sure. You'd be surprised. You don't have to do any sort of like really, really crazy training paddles. Like I paddled in LPS for 48 hours, but my longest training paddle was I think 12 hours or 10 hours. So not near like not even half the distance. So I know
No,
some
so
people get discouraged because they see 24 or 48 hours. You do have to be consistent in your training, but you don't have to do like the exact race volume.
no, of course, yeah, that's a really interesting point that you don't actually have to train for that amount of time beforehand. It's you kind of just need to get used to I mean, going for 12 hours and even pushing, through the night as well. Did you train during the night at all?
Yeah, I did a handful of night or early morning paddles. I did a lot of like 3 a.m. paddles, just preparing myself to be tired during LPS. I'm not someone who can nap easily, so I thought that I was going to be staying awake throughout the time, which is how it wound up playing out as well. I tried to nap 1 or 2 times without success. So I did a lot of paddles where I'd be in the water at 3, waking up at 2, did a few nighttime paddles, and then that 12-hour paddle, I think we started at like 4 p.m.
Hmm.
So going through the night.
Right. Wow, that's amazing. Did you notice a difference in your body paddling on a bit less sleep, especially just during those training sessions? We'll get to the event shortly, but just during the training sessions, how did your body react to those timings when you were paddling?
Yeah, you can definitely feel it. Like your heart rate is somewhat tied to sleep and recovery. So you will feel a little bit more of a drag on those days. For example, today I woke up early, met a friend to do sprints, and I knew that given that I didn't get to sleep at the time I wanted to last night, it probably wasn't going to be like my best sprinting performance. But I think it's important for a race like that to train tired. And because, that's how those races are. You're going to be tired. You're not always going to be waking up 10 out of 10. There's going to be laps in that race or in other races, times where you feel exhausted and you have to train yourself to be able to push through that.
Yeah, definitely. Do you track your training sessions with anything as well? Do you track heart rates and things like that?
Yeah, I use an external heart rate monitor that links. I have a Garmin watch that I train with.
I've also heard from people that do train with it that they kind of don't look at it the last couple of days before an event because they don't want to see maybe a poor performance and then kind of get a little bit down on race day. Is that something you do?
Yeah, my watch was telling me leading up to last paddler, like unproductive training, detraining, because the watch that
Right.
I have like monitors your recovery score and it gives you a sleep score, measures your heart rate variability, a ton of factors, honestly, probably too many, right? Then if you're just like a purist going out there, I have friends that paddle without a watch. And sometimes I'm like, I wish I could do that and just be out there and enjoy it. So not getting like too obsessed with the numbers. Or even like after last paddler, my watch is like beeping at me, like you're being lazy, like time to go stand, walk, whatever. So sometimes you have to you're smarter than your watch in some capacity, So I did ignore it a little bit leading up to the race when it was telling me it was unproductive and I knew I had to be tapering my training essentially.
Yeah, of course, definitely. Yeah, we know how our body feels. We don't need a watch to tell us that. um, can you tell us a
Exactly.
little bit about the goal around 48 laps at last paddler standing? It's for 2 days straight paddling on a board. Was that something you wanted to achieve, or is it something that you just naturally flowed, or you just kind of had a goal and then you kind of surpassed that goal?
Yeah, so my goal going into it, when I first signed up, I was thinking 24 hours would be cool. And then I don't know, maybe a week went by when I was like, why play it small, right? Let's try for 48. I think the thought in the beginning, like claiming that 48-hour goal was a little bit intimidating because I had never even stayed awake for 48 hours, let alone paddled for 48 hours. And I didn't want to make a goal that was too unrealistic that I would just completely fall on my face. I think it's important in life to have goals that are hard and something to work towards, but they also need to be somewhat realistic, right? So, not knowing anything about training on no sleep or racing on no sleep at the time when I first signed up. I was like, "That's crazy," but I don't know, very quickly, a few days after paddling or sorry, a few days after signing up, I knew I wanted to paddle for 48 hours. Seeing that that was the last paddler last year was 48, I was trying to match that. I would have originally, like, after that 48-hour goal, I was like, "It would be cool to win this and just be the last paddler standing," but I knew that the race would likely go longer than 48 hours based off everyone training, knowing last year being the first year, that it would go longer. And I didn't think that that would really be realistic for me given that the lap increases from 3.3 miles, so just under 5 miles, essentially a 12-minute mile on 2 nights of not sleeping. While I can, race at that pace, I didn't think it'd be possible with the lack of sleep, so I decided to push myself with the 48, but still have it be a little bit realistic.
Yeah, amazing. And just speaking about that, you said that obviously at the 48-hour mark, the lap length increases. I saw an
Mhm.
Instagram post that you were maybe slightly disappointed that you didn't go for that longer lap, the super lap that they call it, number 49. Do you just want to expand a little bit on that? Because we've had some of the readers at SUPboarder magazine write into us saying, we saw the Instagram post from Lindsey. We want to just know a bit more about what she was thinking after the race.
Yeah, sure. So after I called it at 48, which I had known from the start, I felt pretty good throughout the race. Um, before actually getting in the water that day, I wasn't sure, if 48 was something that was actually gonna happen or if it was just, like, a little bit out of reach, a little bit delusional. Like I said, I didn't know about how it would be not sleeping for 2 nights. But pretty early on in the race, when it got really windy, yeah, I said to myself, "I'm not even gonna try for 49 or to win the race. I'm just going to stick to my goal of 48." And I felt happy with that at the end. One of my best friends wound up going on for the last 2 laps. So being able to transition to a competitor, to a cheerleader for a friend, at the time, it was awesome. I was able to support him running around, Nathan Vanderson, cheering, really, sprinting, honestly, place to place to go and see him was super cool, and I don't really yes, I wouldn't say that I regret stopping at 48 because I wouldn't have been able to be a witness to that if I had kept going, and I wouldn't be able to support in that manner. But after a little bit of reflection, I realized that stopping at 48, it sends a message that, there can't be a girl that goes the super lap, as they call it, or that wins last paddler. And even though I was happy with my performance of 48, and increasing the prior female record, I just didn't want that to be the message that gets sent to the world because, as you know, there's no female category in that race, so you're sprinting at the end, with the guys. And I just felt like dropping out sent a message to girls that I didn't wanna send. I didn't realize at the time when I dropped out that there'd be so many eyes on me as a female paddler and an endurance paddler, but I got a handful of messages from girls signing up for the race after seeing, me out there, and I don't know. I had my knees taped to my board at the time, and that was one of my motivations to keep going was to send a message for girls like her. I don't have a daughter right now. I don't have kids right now, but I envision myself having a daughter one day, and I would like for her to have the example that, there are girls out there. You don't need to limit yourself just because it hasn't been done before. That you can pretty much go down and, break the ceiling or the walls down. So I was a little bit disappointed in myself, honestly, a few weeks after just doing some reflecting on, like, what that messaging is. So at the end of the race, I told Greg Wingo, the race director, I was like, "I wanna come back next year as a crew member or as a volunteer. I do not wanna do this again." I think that was my, like, bleeding palm speaking. Because a few days later, I knew I was like, "I have to come back and try for 49 and maybe try to be the last paddler standing, who knows? But I at least need to accomplish one of those super laps."
Yeah, amazing. I mean, 48 hours and 48 laps of last paddler standing. That is just inspirational to both men and women. It's incredible to see you push that far. A lot of people dropped out beforehand. You had the mental strength to keep going and the physical strength as well. I mean, congratulations. I don't think you should be disappointed at all that you did pull out at that time. But it also sounded like you had still had a bit of energy left in the tank because you were running. I think you mentioned you were cheering on Blake, who ended up winning the event. But you were kind of running from place to place. You still had some energy left in the tank.
Yeah, I feel like I could have went for I don't know, a handful more laps if it had stayed at that 3.3-mile lap. My strategy for that was to go slow, keep my heart rate low, and have a shorter recovery time. Never really give myself the opportunity to, like, allow my body to come down too much and stop where I would be cramping up. So I was paddling at a slower pace. So I feel like if you're in that zone 2, sometimes even zone 1 heart rate, that low heart rate, that you can keep going. So I did have that energy at the end. I'm sure part of that was adrenaline of the race. I had the best amazing crew. Like, I'm smiling so much just thinking about it because they really made the race what it was for me and super fun. So having them, seeing them lap after lap 48 times as I turned the corner, it definitely helped me to keep going and give me that energy.
Were there points throughout the race that you wanted to stop? You said early on that it got windy and you thought you might not be able to reach the goal of 48 laps. Were there other times that you might have thought you could have pulled out?
Yeah, once it started raining, on the second night, it was raining really hard and the visibility was really low. I did not come prepared with any rain gear at all, which I already made a mental note to self prepare for all weather for next year. It was downpouring, and I had borrowed one of my crew members, like, extra large rain jacket that was swimming on me and kind of like chafing my body. So I said to myself, I'm like, man, I already made it. I think it was like over 30 hours at that point. I already made it like 30 hours. If it's like this, I mean, I just don't know if it's worth it. It was honestly beyond like uncomfortable, just the cold and the rain. And then after that, it got incredibly foggy too, which I did one of those laps in the fog by myself, and I was pretty tired at that point, so I was hallucinating, and I just remember being a little bit frightened when I was alone. I had synced up with Blake on the future foggy laps because I was like, "It's a little creepy out here. I can't see anything, and I'm hallucinating people and other objects." So those are the times that I thought about dropping out, but other than that, I didn't really think about it. I just kept thinking about my goal and the reasons why I was out there, and honestly, it felt like a blessing to be out there. I thought about people that don't have the opportunity to be out there. So I never really got into that negative mindset. My mental state was really positive throughout. Just that rain, and it was really tough. And then, I think I mentioned I had, like, really bad blisters. So if those got to the point where they were rupturing and potentially could be, like, get infections or whatever, I teetered on my mind for a second, but I just kept taping them to try to keep them protected and closed.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's just incredible to hear you hallucinating and going through all those different kind of weather fronts as well, to finish still with 48 hours of paddling. What you when you were training for the event, it sounds like you have such a mental strength as well that kept you going. And you mentioned there that you had a lot of things to think about that pushed you to get to 48 hours. Um, when you were training, is there any way that you can train your mind to cope with an endurance stand-up paddle event such as the last paddle standing?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that mindset training is honestly just as important as the time on the water. There's no replacement for training on your board, but you can only be on your board so many hours a day, right? You can be training your mind around the clock. So I did a lot of journaling exercises, as well as visualization, meditation. Um, that was really it. Like, the journaling is really helpful. It's kind of feels like a silly exercise at first, but it is incredibly helpful to talk about, or just writing out what you feel like you're going to be envisioning at the time, to help you prepare for it. Like, I wrote down how I thought my body was going to be in pain and how to handle that, what it would feel like coming around as the last paddler standing. Even the night before the race, when race directors going over the rules, they have like this massive belt buckle that they award the last paddler standing. And that night, I went back to our Airbnb and I was just envisioning Greg giving that to me. It might be a little bit woo woo or whatnot, but I feel like those exercises really help. I did a lot of that when I was preparing for the crossing for CF in 22 because I had that ankle injury and I further injured it on a surf trip. My longest paddle for that race wound up only being 12 and a half miles because the timing of my injury. So I spent the rest of that surf trip just like I got injured on the surf trip. So I spent the rest of that surf trip just journaling about pushing through the pain and then a lot of visualization type stuff. So I think that is just as important as getting on the board.
Yeah, definitely. It really is. I mean, journaling is an amazing tool to control the mind, and obviously it works for you. And visualization as well. That's such a big thing in sport. A lot of the top athletes are visualizing everything, um, and trying to, I guess, breathe the everything to come true in that visualization. Um, did you notice any differences between your training and maybe someone else's training, or even just during the race? Did you notice any different strategies being employed by all the paddlers?
Yeah, there's a handful of different strategies. I think last paddler standing is where you'll see a lot of different endurance athletes test their own personal theories. There's not a ton of research out yet on endurance paddling in terms of like peer reviewed studies or anything. So the research I did was based off of running and cycling. I already mentioned a little bit, but my strategy was to go slow and steady the whole time to prepare to just be tired. You saw some athletes that were going out hard in the beginning. I don't know if that was a scare tactic, which is actually funny. That's advice that someone gave me. They're like, go out really hard in the beginning so people get worried and drop out or whatever. And I was like, that is, first of all, I want everyone to last out there and set their own goals. So I wasn't really taking that like competitive angle, but you did see some athletes go out really fast in order to have a longer break. Some athletes came to the park with 20 minutes to spare, which is enough time to, grab maybe a 10-minute nap. Whereas my rakes were like 12 minutes. So you did definitely see a few different strategies out there.
Yeah, right. And during that that time that you had to rest, what were you doing in that 12 minutes?
Nutrition, mostly like switching out my hydration pack. 'Cause I pretty much change that out every single lap, grabbing a snack, some laps, a lot of stretching, and unfortunately, a lot of changing, blister bandages.
Right. Of course. And do you all have to start the next lap at the same time, or can you kind of wait for the start line to go and then you kind of clock runs from there or not?
No, you have to start. It's every hour on the hour. You have a 2-minute warning. Greg will blow his whistle, and you're supposed to head down to the beach at that point. And then as soon as he blows his whistle again, you have to be on the water to not be disqualified.
Yeah, I feel like it's such a unique event as well that everyone's kind of there to support that event, to support the sport of stand up paddling as well. And it was great to see that even on the last lap, one of the competitors let Blake go to do the final lap and to take home the last paddler standing title because otherwise the race could have won.
Honestly, I don't know. I'm friends with Alex as well. I think he could have done another lap. I actually think he could have done several other laps. I think that was a great act of sportsmanship. I'm sure he was feeling tired at the point, but I know what his training was, and I know that he was training to do 5 laps at that pace. Um, so yeah, I think it could have went longer, and I think next year it will go longer.
Yeah, that's interesting call. It'd be great to see you in the mix as well. I mean, you're in the mix last year, but for this year, I think it'd be great to have quite a few people challenging those super laps.
Yeah, I'm super excited to come back this year, and I already know there's going to be a handful of more girls out lining up, which is awesome and super inspiring to me. So hopefully we'll start to see that level out, more girls out there for the super lap this year. It was 5 guys that went for it. I know next year at least it'll be me. Hopefully there'll be someone else out there with me. Another
Yeah,
another
amazing.
female,
And
I should say.
yeah,
There'll
definitely.
definitely be a
Yeah.
handful of guys.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, those women entering the race, they're going to be inspired by you and what you achieved last year. I want to know what inspires you or who inspires you to push yourself and to push the boundaries.
Yeah, I think about my stepdad a lot when I'm paddling. He passed away from pancreatic cancer in 2019. So he's constantly on my mind when I'm paddling. And then I had another friend that passed in a car accident when he was 21, I believe. So I just think about the people who can't be out there doing it. That inspires me a lot. I'm fortunate enough to have a lot of friends that are great paddlers that inspire me as well. I mentioned earlier who my best friend Casey, who I started Aloha Athletics with. She's definitely a big source of my inspiration. Not just her performance, but how positive she is and the impact that she has on the sport. That's one thing that stuck with me is anytime I'm out there, if I see someone, maybe their paddles backwards or they're on several times you see it here, an inflatable that might be like deflating, offer them a toe back and how to properly pump up their board. So she's inspired me a lot, and then I also really think about, like, hopefully one day I'll have a daughter and just I wanna kinda pave the path for her.
That's amazing. Yeah, super inspiring to hear. And yeah, I mean, we wish you all the successes for what's coming up this year. Obviously, you've got the crossing for cystic fibrosis coming up. How is that panning out right now? You're obviously starting your training. You said just right about now in the lead up to that event. How is that looking for you?
It's awesome. I'm super excited. We have a pretty full division this year for the female solo competitive. I think we already have like almost 10 girls signed up in that division. And it's still early on. It's almost March, so there's still time for people to sign up. I think there's about 30 registration spots left, and I think the event will sign up. I started out on a 20-week plan that I wrote myself. So I think this week is week 4. So 16 more weeks until the event. I'm super stoked. We had a group out over the weekend getting some drafting practice in the ocean. I think it's going to be a really competitive event this year for the females, but for all categories as well. It's just very full. A lot of people are signing up competitive because that's a race where you can sign up recreationally just to try to make it across the ocean and not have your time count. There's different rules for the competitive. So this year we have a lot of competitive paddlers coming into it. So I'm excited to push myself in a different capacity. When I did it in 2022, I was a rec paddler. I didn't have an opportunity to see where I would stack up against the other paddlers. So I'm really motivated this year, hoping to land a spot somewhere on the podium. There are a lot of really good, strong paddlers out there, but I still have 16 weeks to prepare myself. So yeah, feeling excited and just eager for the event. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like with your attitude, your training program, and obviously your prior results in some of the other events that you'll probably smash the field this year, which is going to be cool.
I don't wanna go in with it with that mindset and feel kind of cocky. They're 2 totally different events. One's on the ocean, and there's so many things outside of your control, whether it's swell or, wind. There's so many factors, but I'm looking forward to it.
Is there anything else you wanted to add to the conversation?
Yeah, I guess I would just encourage anyone that might be listening to this who is interested in either Last Paddler or the crossing to take the leap to sign up for it. I know for me, for when I first signed up for the crossing, I was actually reflecting on this with a friend recently that it took me a little bit to sign up and pull the trigger when I first heard of the event and realized that it was either 22 or 24 because I was busy in 23. I started showing up to the group training paddles, but I didn't pull the trigger on actually registering for maybe about a month because it felt out of reach. 80 miles on an open ocean after not really ever paddling more than maybe 2 miles. And it wasn't until someone in the organization told me that, this is doable and achievable. I felt like I was looking for someone to tell me that they believe in me because I couldn't believe in myself at the time, which reflecting on it 2 years later, I'm like, damn, Lindsey, what an idiot. Like there's not always going to be a cheerleader for you. You do need to believe in yourself, but I just want to encourage anyone that's thinking about Last Paddler or the crossing to sign up. And I just want to let you know that I do believe in you. I'm not anyone different. I'm just someone who is determined. And I think anyone can do what I did as long as they put their mind to it. So if you're someone who's on the fence about the crossing for cystic fibrosis, which is just in itself, it's an amazing race unlike any other, crossing the ocean, a handful of days in Bimini, hanging out with all of your friends, and raising money for an amazing, grassroots charity. Or Last Paddler, which, it's an event, that's unlike any other. I just want you to know that I believe in you, and if you have any questions, you can DM me on Instagram. I am looking this year for, Last Paddler to, have, wanna have 1 or 2 girls that I mentor through Aloha Athletics, but completely for free just to give back and to have, other girls out there. So if that's speaking to you, if you're thinking about it, whether you have a goal of, I don't know, 12, 24, 48, it's not any race that you need to go out to win. I knew last year it'd be very unlikely if I did win, but I still wanted to go out there and push myself. So don't let any of those negative limitations hold you back. I would love to see you out there. I know both those races are pretty much coming out at capacity. Um, Nathan Benderson Park has a limit of 50 paddlers for the event, and the crossing is capped at 200, and both of them they're more than, I would say, like 70% full. I don't know the exact number, but I know that they're getting there. So don't wait. Shoot me a message. I would love to chat with you about either of the events.
Wow, amazing. Such strong words. You've inspired me to maybe sign up for it.
You should. You
Yeah,
seriously should.
yeah, definitely. No, thank you so much, Lindsay. I'm sure that that's going to speak to so many women out there that are going to believe in themselves. And we as humans, we try to look for validation everywhere. But like you said, you just have to believe in yourself and believe in your ability to be able to push the boundaries, and you're out there doing it. So thanks so much for just kind of being that pillar of inspiration in the stand-up paddle
Yeah.
community.
Yeah, of course. My recent motto as I was training for Last Paddler is Delulu is a Salulu. Like, you need to be a little bit delusional with your goals and believe in believe in yourself. So, like I said, you don't need someone there rooting for you, but either way, I am in everyone's court for both of these races.
Well, thanks, Lindsay. I really appreciate you taking the time out to speak with us. It's been such a pleasure and it's kind of given me a little bit of, I don't know, a little bit of up and go to, enjoy the day. It's just the morning here in Australia where I'm recording from. So it's kind of, yeah, just get out there and seize the day. So thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, and I hope to see you at Last Paddler this year. Come on, grab one of those last few spots.
Yeah, you never know. I don't know if that's on my list, but I know a few friends that definitely the endurance side of things. But no, thanks again, Lindsay. And yeah, appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you all for tuning in to watch or listen to this super inspiring talk with Lindsey Tilton. If anything resonated with you, make sure you do check the links in the description below to get in touch with Lindsay. Remember, SUPboarder has a subscription service called SUPboarder Pro, where it gives you access to exclusive content, and you can also email all the experts here in the SUPboarder team with any questions you may have, plus a whole lot more. So head over to supboardermag.com/pro to learn more.